Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Stevenson. I am a senior student at the EPDM program, and I'm here to talk to you about the Whabouchi Project Environmental and Social Impact Assessment. So, just to have an idea of what this entails, this project will be located 30 kilometers east of the Cree Nation of Nemaska in Quebec, Canada. The Cree Nation refers to the native peoples from Canada. The scale of the project, it is estimated that this is one of the largest spodumene deposits in the world, and it would actually produce about 213,000 tons of spodumene annually. The timeline for this project would be about 23 years from the construction phase to the closure one. It is estimated to take about $159.2 million to be completed. The size of the report was 598 pages, and it was released on March 28th, 2013. The market context here is important to mention that there has been an increased demand for lithium due to the production of electric cars and electronic devices, and this has obviously affected or increased the demand for spodumene, which is the source of lithium. So it has gone from 6% in 1990 to 35% in 2012. So the methods that they used to collect data in the social impact assessment were semi-structure and field interviews, documentation review for projects from previous projects, and literature reviews. These pictures that you see on your right are pictures of the Nemaska Cree Nation from Canada that I took from the official website of this community. So the findings that the SIA came down to were divided into six categories: land and resource use, jobs and economy, community wellness, culture and archaeological heritage, community structure, and landscape. Here I would like to highlight that these are only the findings from the social impact assessment. I am not including anything related to the environmental aspect because the focus of this presentation is only on the social aspect. So we're going to start with the land and resource use. As you can see from the table that I took from the report, all the aspects that are mentioned here are going to be negatively impacted by the mine. So there will be a reduction in hunting activities that obviously will impact the Cree community, reduction in trapping activities for the Cree members, modification in harvesting activities due to the barriers that are going to be put around the mine. And there is also going to be avoidance in harvesting resources because animals will most likely avoid these spaces. So that will decline the amount of population available for hunting. Modification and accessibility due to the territory presence of the mine, modification in the use of the Bible camp, which is a very important territory for the Cree communities, and disturbance of non-native fishing activities will also be impacted. So the recommendations that the practitioners suggested were the following. They should suspend extraction during the hunting seasons that are essential for subsistence for these communities. And also the Cree community should be informed of all the mine's calendar activities so they can plan and coordinate with the mine. And also there will be measures taken to allow the snowmobile routes to be altered. So the signaling will be very important for them to post them or to make them visible for the community so they know where not to go and what alternative routes there are. Now the jobs and economy, as you may be able to expect, there will be positive impacts because there will be a creation of jobs. This is going to improve the local economy and of course is going to create business opportunities for local and regional enterprises. However, there are also going to be negative socioeconomic impacts as once the mine closes, the jobs will be lost, and there will also be perhaps uh, competition from the mine with other industries in the area. So workers that are employed from the community will likely not want to go back to those sectors. And of course, there are going to be some debt related issues from the families and perhaps some discrimination against Cree community members being employed at the factory, at the mine. So the recommendations that they suggested were community partnership with the mine to come up with ways to decrease the impact of the job of the mine closing, employee assistance once the mine closes, and awareness of Cree culture just so they can decrease the likelihood of discrimination in the job place. As for community wellness, there will be a potential increase in accessibility of illicit substances in the community, reduce cohesiveness of the community, and kind of like a loss of cultural identity. The recommendations suggested were drug and alcohol prevention program, zero tolerance measures, and mines newsletter distribution just to keep the community involved and informed about the mine projects. As far as the cultural and archaeological heritage, since there were not remains old enough identified in the site, they suggested or they came down to the conclusion that there would be no impact in this category. However, if they were to find some remains that were worth of any exploration, they would suspend or they suggested that the activities should be suspended and the archaeological authorities should be contacted immediately. The landscape, modification of landscape, of course, is going to be a little bit disturbing for the community that is not used to seeing these excavation projects around their area. The visual impact of the mine facilities would also create some type of disturbance in the community. And for this specific area, they suggested progressive revegetation and visual screenings that, from what I understood, are basically ways to cover or to hide the damage that has been done to the area just so the communities are not exposed to it. As far as community infrastructure, it was suggested or found that there would be an increased pressure on social services due to the amount of people that would be moving to the area to work in the mine. So services such as health and youth protection or daycares and things like that would be overburdened. So the recommendation that they suggested was for a nurse and trained personnel to assist the mine at all times. In terms of the SIA practitioner profiles, I recognized or I identified two specific stakeholders. Catherine Lucier, she's an anthropologist with 15 years of experience conducting social studies around the Cree territories, and the EEM, which is a sustainable consulting firm that specializes in community development and the environment. So there was actually significant public involvement throughout the process. The Nebraska Lithium Company used informative brochures to inform the community about the proposed project. They held a few presentations for the community to be informed about the project as well. They also conducted individual and focus groups interviews. The focus groups were divided into three categories. They had youth, they also had the elders and the hunters, and they also had women, just so they could count with the input from these three specific demographics. Then they also had community advisory committee meetings where they talked with the Cree members and Nemaska Band Council, which is specific to the Nemaska Cree. They had a few meetings with them just so they could also count with their input and see how they could mitigate the cultural impact from this mine on the Cree reservations. So this is basically the calendar of the public involvement projects or techniques that they used. And as you can see, it goes back from 2011 to 2013. They interviewed Tollyman, who are the leaders of the hunting communities. They had meetings with focus groups and things like that. And this is where they got most of the input to include in the final report. So the principles of international SIA, since this was carried out in Canada, as you may be able to remember, these are taken from the book. So the first one was to promote community development and empowerment. I would say that the SIA did a decent job at doing this, even though, and on the second one, the maximization of positive outcomes, I believe there was an overemphasis on the mitigation of negative ones instead of uh, um, a, a, a lengthier mention or elaboration of how those positive outcomes could be maximized. The methodology, when it comes to the third principle, can be easily applied to other interventions because they use very simple techniques to gather data. The contribution to adaptive management policies, I would say they did an okay job because they provided alternative or recommendations that would work for the community sometimes, but with coordination of the mine supervisors, they could adapt certain activities such as the hunting and the suspension of mining activities when it came to hunting for the Cree community. It also built on local knowledge because they interviewed people from the community and they gathered information from other projects where the community had given input previously. The consideration for cumulative impacts, I would say this is the principle where they lacked the most consideration because at the end of the report, the socioeconomic impacts are very, very heavily focused on the economic aspect. So they basically did not mention how the project would ultimately affect the cultural heritage of the community throughout the years. They just basically focused on the economic aspect, saying that it would be very beneficial for the communities. Analysis of impacts of past activities. This one I would say that they did an okay job in because they actually collected data from other mining projects that had taken place around the community, and even one of the dams that was recently built in 2002, they also got access to that information from where they built some of their input from. The SIA techniques can easily be applied to other events such as natural disasters and things like that. So that one, I would say they accomplished as well. So based on this criteria, I would say they can get a B plus or even a B, honestly, just because there was a heavy focus on the financial aspect of it. And that's basically all my critique for this project. If you guys have any questions, please comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching.